What up, people? How's it going? This is Bharat here. Welcome back to yet another video with the Codamong channel. We have a very special guest in this video. We've been having a series of discussions about Flutter and things around that with a lot of people. But in this video, I have a very, very special person. His name is Nick Manning. He's a programmer. He's been a developer for so long. And very recently started with the fluttercrashcourse.com. So we're going to be talking about Flutter and things around that with Nick. Hi, Nick. How's it going?
Good. Thanks for having me. This is great. My first interview for Flutter, so
Yeah,
it's pretty
yeah,
cool.
definitely. It's been amazing to have you with in this channel, Nick. So my first question around is about Flutter itself, and I know that you have been a programmer, you've been a developer for so long. I saw it from your bio that you have been a developer for more than 20 years now. But how did this transition to Flutter, and how did this everything start, and what has been your experience with Flutter so far?
Yeah, okay. I started with Flutter. I just stumbled upon it. I don't remember how I stumbled upon it actually, to be honest. It was back in 2017, and I just got really into it. I I've I tend to get obsessive about things and into things. I started a number of meetup groups and Go and graph databases and all that. And Flutter definitely is something I jumped into. I was using React Native for a bit. I was writing mobile apps for probably 5 years, 5 solid years as an iOS developer. Using Swift and Objective C, a lot of Objective C, and then Swift. Um, Before that, I can give you my background in a sec. But how I got into Flutter, I just started creating apps. So Dart was very similar to Java. It's like if Java and Ruby and C Sharp had a baby, I guess it would be Dart, if that makes sense. Um, yeah, yeah. And, Dart, most of Flutter is most of Flutter is like, hey, I want to use this widget, and then parentheses, and then some parameters, and then more nested widgets in that. That's what Flutter is. So I didn't need to learn Dart to use Flutter, and I think that's, at least for me, I didn't really need to learn Dart per se. I just winged it. That's how I got into Flutter. And then I created, tutorial videos just for fun, and I created fluttercrashcourse.com, and I have a YouTube channel, nickmanning.dev. That's the YouTube handle. It's just my name, Nick Manning, and that was later, the YouTube channel. But yeah, fluttercrashcourse.com. What I did was I created a Flutter web application to drive a custom web site, an e-commerce site to sell courses. So fluttercrashcourse.com is used to be a web app that was all Dart and worked out really well. It was integrated with Stripe and deployed to Kubernetes using Google Cloud Platform back then. Now I don't have that set up anymore, but it worked out pretty well. So that's how I got into Flutter and what I was doing, fluttercrashcourse.com, and I started a YouTube channel as well here and there. And I'm still planning to create more courses, and I created also Steady Calendar, which is a Flutter app. It's a habit tracker app, which shows you a calendar, and you select the day, what day you have done a habit that you're shooting for, and then it shows you like stats and all that stuff. So yeah, and that's it for me. I like a lot of different smaller apps that I didn't quite publish. I didn't get around to publishing, but yeah.
So yeah, so Nick, so you've been talking about the journey before Flutter, where you were an Objective C developer, and you moved into Flutter as an hobby, obviously. So do you see any differences between the Objective C as a native programming language versus Flutter, which is a cross-platform kind of a wrapper around the view, kind of a toolkit? Do you see that any major differences that catch your eye?
Objective C has a higher learning curve for sure, and less flexibility. Um, it's not cross like Objective-C is just a language. Yeah, Flutter is, the framework, but Objective-C is very powerful. I like Objective-C a lot. Swift is okay. I'm not as much of a fan of it. It's I can't speak to the newer features of it. What is an amazing advantage of Objective-C or Swift is, you get to use the latest and greatest features from Apple. So if they come out with a new feature, it might not be supported yet with Flutter. So it depends on the use case. So my use case was my wife and I designed an app, and we wanted to ship the app that was cross-platform. And for our case, it Flutter fit the bill. So I guess for any engineer, it's best to kind of like, pick the right tool for the job, and be very wary of hype and how popular something is, right? Like it's fun, but it's always like what your goal is, right? My goal is writing an app. If your goal is to freelance and make money and make a living for yourself, you might consider Flutter. It depends on the market or where you're working. If you want to work at a big company, maybe Objective-C is better, so it really depends.
All right. So yeah, exactly about something similar kind of an idea around what the differences should be. So obviously that the challenges that you would have faced when using Flutter in terms of production application, since you've already released an application, were there any kind of a hiccup that you faced, or was it like, is Flutter up to the mark as a production application? Like, is it able to scale to that level? This is my question. Were you able to yeah, were you able to do something around that? Like, were you able to scale it up to the production level?
So I think scalability, that term is I think probably better for like backend services and things that can scale, things that are elastic. Something you compile and put on a device is, can it scale like features wise? For my case, the features were quite straightforward, so it scaled fine, right? There was no exotic features, and I think Flutter can scale well on the mobile device on the front end if you have a clear set of like features you want to implement, and you're not trying to do something exotic. If you are trying to do something exotic and very custom, same problem with React Native. You have to like write your own like feature in iOS or Android and then link it to Flutter separately. So that could be a lot of work. So it really depends. For my case, Flutter fit the bill for a production app. Like I didn't have any weird random crashes or performance issues, right? So it worked out really well, I think. Yeah.
Cool. That's just very good to know. So obviously, this isn't your first kind of an your journey. Like, this isn't the first kind of application that you've launched. I actually saw your bio, and you have done things before this as well. So how is that? How has that journey been? Like, been a doing programming for more than 20 years, and how do you see the growth of the industry at the moment? Because a lot of new developers coming into picture, a lot of new people getting hyped around toolkits like Flutter and even React Native for some people. What has the journey been like in terms of cross-platform tools in particular? Your experience around that?
Okay, so yeah, what's the journey like been like for cross-platform development? So here's the thing. Like, I like playing video games, right? I have a PC. I'm a PC gamer. I like playing Call of Duty, and like Iron Harvest is a cool real-time strategy game I've been getting into. I like just even simple stuff like Worms, that game. And when you play a video game, you don't think twice that you would install it on PC, iPhone, Android phone. Like, it's cross-platform, right? Right? The Unreal Engine, that's cross-platform, right? You don't think twice about that. So that's what makes sense for Flutter for me, that it is cross-platform, right? The biggest challenge, though, if I can, like that's my thought. I think it's very natural to choose Flutter for that case. The biggest challenge I've seen with Flutter is not the technology. it's designing for cross-platform. Do you use like iPhones in the past or mostly Android phones yourself? Like,
I've been using both iPhone as well as Android. Yeah.
so here's the thing. I was an iPhone user for 5 years. I switched to Android after I started using Flutter because I was like, oh, okay, cool. I can make my own apps, and now I'm an Android guy. I don't use iPhone. I don't have a Mac. I have a Linux laptop. I have a Dell XPS, and I have Pop OS on that. I use Mac for my work, right? I have Windows on my PC for video editing and gaming. And the point I'm trying to make is that, like, when you're using those operating systems for iPhone, at least, you're very used to a certain UI style, right? You're not really used to material design for iOS, right? It looks ugly. Like when I was an iOS user, material design, unless it was a web app that was very like technical, like Google Cloud Platform, right? That uses material design. It was really ugly. It was super ugly, right? So if I'm writing a Flutter app, that's the challenge, right? If I have a very simple app, I'm not going to use material design. I'm going to really customize the crap out of material design because I don't want my iOS users feeling like, what the heck is this material design? Like it's really ugly. I'm used to the iOS design language. So what happens is that as a Flutter developer, you have to be really, I think, good at doing custom UI design, where you're still using the material design like toolkit in Flutter, but you're customizing it enough that it's kind of like a bespoke UI, where it's customized enough where it doesn't look like, out of the box Android. And so that's the challenge. Like I think it's a design challenge for developers. Yeah.
Obviously, yeah, that actually makes sense. Now I think about it,
Does
like,
that make sense?
yeah, you use your iOS applications. You don't see a crappy kind of an app opening up with a homepage with all the material designs in your iPhone. So
Yeah, although I mean,
that's
material
yeah,
design looks good for like Gmail for Android, and maybe it looks good for iOS. But like, you know, if material design was used for like the settings app for iOS, you would be like, this is ugly as heck because I want to see the Apple design language because it looks good at least. I mean, yeah.
yeah, exactly. So got it. So that's about the Flutter application in terms of mobile. So long. Have you dabbled around a desktop or maybe the web that they have, like Flutter Web and Flutter Desktop? Have you
Yeah,
dabbled
so
around that?
I've used Flutter Web, and um, it's really big. The size of the pages. I can't use it. I try to use it for my own website. I'm like, no, sorry. Like until they have like, okay, the only reason why I would use it is if I was doing a desktop application. I would maybe consider it, but I can't speak to that because I haven't tried it. If I was doing a web application, though, where I needed to have mobile cross-platform and some web application, I would definitely consider it because material design, don't get me wrong, it looks okay. It's just a certain style, right? It's material design is very, very functional and like very useful. It's very practical. So if I have a web application where I manage like your bank account, or a web application where you're managing have some SaaS app and you're managing data, right? Like an e-commerce app website, like I would use probably Flutter Web. I would definitely consider it. But if it was for a simple website, unless they get the size like way down, no way. I right now use Svelte for my personal website, for example, because their component UI library is like 4K. It's really, really small. So if you see like if you have like one of my favorite operating systems is the very lean operating system they use for dumb phones. It's not a smartphone, it's a dumb phone. I think I have the phone here. Actually, I don't have it with me. There's some very lean operating systems. I'm not recalling the name right now. That you need to have very lean like file size for like how much JavaScript you're downloading. So Flutter Web will like fall flat on its face right now because you have to load only like, like maybe no more than 50 kilobytes of data. So like, uh, I don't know. Flutter Web, we'll see what happens with that. Yeah, I hope they make it leaner.
Yeah, that's been like in the roadmap. Like if you see the roadmap, it says Flutter Hummingbird project been there for more than 1 year. It's still in beta. So that's like it's a question like a lot of people have been asking and they still don't have any kind of a response around that.
Yeah.
The
Oh,
similar
sorry
kind
to
of
tell
an
you. I remember the name. It's called Kai OS. Have you heard of Kai OS?
uh no, I haven't
Okay.
actually.
So
KAI, right?
this is really interesting, probably for your viewers, especially if they're from India, because India is one of the biggest dumb phone markets as well as smartphone markets. And the dumb phone market, it's an operating system based on Linux, I believe. I think, yeah, and it's for very cheap phones for people who might not be able to afford a $100 phone, but you can have all the Google apps or all the fancy apps like WhatsApp, Skype, or Google Assistant, Google Calendars, all in a very, very lightweight operating system. And when you load web pages and apps with that, the web pages have to be extremely lean. You can't use Flutter. You can't use Flutter Web. So I would like to see Flutter Web evolve into something lean enough where you can run it on like web-based platforms that you need to be very lean. So that's what I said about that. Like KaiOS is pretty amazing, and I hope it can be ready for that someday.
Yeah, definitely been hoping that. And on the topic of like Flutter Desktop, have you thought about that? Have you had a chance around that? Because I feel like it's been like they're trying to do so much and not delivering as such. Like Flutter application, Flutter mobile part came out well, and Flutter Web has been there in the roadmap for so long. And desktop again is around the same space. Like it's so big and it's not able to scale up properly. It's crashing almost all the time. So
Really?
how do
Yeah.
you, yeah.
How do I what?
How, how do you see this going forward? Like, do you see? Yeah, we wish it gets faster, but it gets done faster. But how do you see this thing happening in terms of desktop? Have you had experience developing for desktop, and what do you think around that space?
I don't have a ton of experience doing desktop. I except for when I was like 16 doing Visual Basic applications for Windows. But um, if I was doing a desktop app, I would still try Flutter. Like maybe if there's stability issues, I just wouldn't use it right at the moment. I'm really excited about Flutter Desktop for Linux. That's amazing. That's awesome news. And but I think for the majority of cases out there, I still think a web app is pretty awesome. And I'm really bullish on, kind of like WebAssembly and being able to write, code that, for very powerful apps that are still running on the web. So, desktop apps, I'm not as, it's kind of a niche market for me. Like it's a niche use case for me. Right.
All right, yeah, getting it. So, oh yeah, one more thing is about you. You told me that you did not have the need to learn Dart. Do you think is it because you already knew programming languages before, and do you think that experience, JavaScript and Java kind of syntax, helped you learn Flutter faster?
It does, but think about the app that like you're writing in Flutter, right? Most of your to learn Flutter, it's you have to learn what widgets you have available, right? Like it's you have to learn the widgets and what you can do with them. And there's not a lot of business logic unless if there is a lot of business logic, it was still kind of easy. I mean, you have a variable, you have methods, you know, it did help to already understand async and await because JavaScript has that kind of thing. I used it a lot in React Native personally and React. I've done React apps. So that was helpful. So beyond async and await for Dart, it's extremely easy to learn. I mean, there's nothing exotic about it. Maybe some of the way constructors work in Dart, that was a little harder. Like there's some more concise ways to declare constructors, and that's cool. But yeah, yeah, that's yeah.
So the reason for asking you that question was like, let's say there's a fresh developer in the market, like the first time he's touching programming, he or she is touching programming. So the majority of the questions that I get are like, should I learn Dart to learn Flutter? And predominantly, I say you don't have to learn. But when they come back and say I couldn't understand anything in Flutter, I was just thinking about like, was it because as a programmer we have had experience understanding the basics of hoops and things like that, and when they go into Flutter as a fresh kind of a developer or programmer, they're not able to pick it up. So the follow-up question is, uh, will you be do you think around this space like Dart is an important kind of an understanding to go forward with Flutter in terms of building complex applications? Do you think it's that there should be some point that you should know Dart to touch things inside that, or do you think we can just go around, skip around, and be happy with what Flutter gives us?
Um, I think there's a lot of junior developers out there, especially on YouTube, and they ask like mind-bogglingly like just the questions people ask are, I think, way off. Like like if you're like, what was one of the questions? Like, should I learn Dart or Flutter first? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
uh, like here's the thing. I wanted to do some videos on this. It's like, learn how to ask the right questions if you're a developer. Learn like from senior engineers on what questions you should be asking, right? Don't just jump to a question like, should I learn Flutter or Dart? Like, try to find a mentor. Try to find senior engineers that are going to give you right advice. Be careful of infotainment. And infotainment, I call, is like TED Talks. They're informative, but it's entertainment at the end of the day. They give you a high level information. YouTube videos that deal with programming. If you're watching videos that people code something like I'm coding WhatsApp in 10 minutes, you're not going to learn programming very effectively. It's entertainment, right? Also, so with that type of question like Flutter versus Dart, like I don't feel it's the right question to ask. Like, first ask, what do you want to do in your career? Like, programmers are good at thinking backwards, from backwards to forwards. Like if you like to do recursion and you're a true programmer, you do everything backwards, right? Like what's your end question? Like, do you want to make money for yourself as a freelancer? Do you want to work at a big company? Do you want to make just hobby apps? Do you want to just explore programming and you're like a newbie developer and you want to try this programming thing out? I think the if you're a new programmer and you just want to learn and try out development, Flutter is a great option. You might not have as much job opportunity as, let's say, learning Python or JavaScript, but it's a good way to learn. But when you do Flutter development, you're not going to really learn like real programming per se, like more involved programming, and that might be a kind of like a that might have caused some conflict with some people. But a lot of Flutter apps is painting stuff on a screen. That's it. Like that's front end development, right? A lot of it, like simple front end development, right? It's just painting stuff on the screen, right? I want to paint this box red, this box blue, right? If you're doing more involved front end development, yeah, it can get very complex, like React development, those React Native, like more involved Flutter apps, like that can get really complex. But if you just want to try programming to like paint stuff on a screen, just use Flutter. Just learn the toolkit, learn the tools you have available to you. You don't have to learn Dart per se, just learn Dart concepts as you go. It is good to take a little quick mini course with Dart, but like it's not that important, even if you're a new programmer. Though I will say, if you are a new programmer, take what I would do is, Dart is very much like Java. So take one of those popular Java books that are very well rated, and just read it a bit. Like get a sense of like programming basics in Java. once you get the sense of programming basics, there's a good book I like called Head First Java, and you can find it free online.
Yep.
You could just Google Head First Java, and then in Google file type :PDF, and someone has uploaded the PDF version of the book. Learn the basics of Java and data types first, and then you're pretty much good for Dart. Like, you don't need to like take a Dart course or like per se. Like, so learn the programming basics, but if you want to just play around with like front end development, just dive into Flutter, and I think it's fine. Sorry
That's
for the long
amazing.
answer, but yeah.
Yeah, you couldn't have put it better. Like, it's just how the Flutter works, and you got to start thinking as a programmer in terms of how what you want in life rather than just going around and playing with the tools that you have. So that's pretty much that's actually, thanks so much for answering that question, Nick. So this last question is again with respect to me. I don't know if people in this my viewers will find it helpful. What's your YouTube journey been like? So how, like, I totally understand that you've been doing it as a hobby, but how do you think like your channels should be growing in the months to come? Because I'm excited to know. I'm a very small very small YouTuber at present. In terms of planning your videos and things like that, how do you think, and what do you think is the best approach which has worked out for you?
So first of all, YouTube is just a marketing channel. It's fun, but if you want to treat it as like a business, and like I would, how I grow my audience and teach people and give people tangible job skills is I started with a niche website first. Niche meaning it's Flutter. Like, Flutter back then was pretty niche. And my website still ranks like in the top 5 links when you type Flutter course on Google. That's awesome. So that's like my primary driver, and getting emails is very important. And providing content on my site is primary. YouTube is a marketing channel for that. And YouTube is fun, but YouTube can be extremely disappointing because you can get tons of viewers and hits and subscribers by creating completely almost worthless videos about programming. You can just say, 3 things to avoid with Flutter and get like tens of thousands of views. Yeah. But you're not teaching programming, right? So if you teach something very meaty, like I'm going to be releasing in a few days a course on how to ship Dart, continuous integration, continuous delivery with Google Cloud Run, right? Docker, how to use Docker, how to use Google Cloud, how do you ship code easily, how do you do serverless coding and all that stuff, like shipping code serverless. And my whole site now is very cheaply run because it's using Google Cloud Run. There's a lot of really amazing job skills as a programmer you can learn to get very high paying jobs, but you have to do the work and you have to know what's in demand in the industry. Like CI/CD is very in demand. But if I have a video on Dart and how to ship Dart code and learn CI/CD and how do you write backend web applications, it's not going to get as many views as people who say, a video on, top 5 things to avoid with Flutter, right? Or code Uber in 5 minutes with Flutter. Like, so that's why YouTube is disappointing. You know what I mean? Because so I'm not as concerned about viewers per se. I'm concerned about engagement, right? So engagement is really important. Like, are people commenting and are you helping people? Do you have a sticky following? Do you have a good brand, right? And that goes beyond YouTube. It goes on Twitter and all that. And if you have a very sticky following and a following that's very loyal, that's what really matters, I think. And it's hard to gauge that with like subscriber counts and views. It's really hard because you can have a very super highly viewed video, but not many subscribers. People just see it and then go away. Like, I have a Flutter course on freecodecamp.org on YouTube. Yeah. It has like 350,000 views, right? But I don't have like a gazillion subscribers per se. Like, maybe I'll hit 10K this year, which is cool. So like, anyway, YouTube is fun and interesting, but I'm more concerned about creating mini courses on my own websites. YouTube can be disappointing, like, because there's a lot of newbies that come along and they're just asking questions that, like, they're just watching YouTube, and how much are you really learning, right? So my advice to newbies with YouTube is just like watch more videos that have like courses, like say like mini course or a course, so like you feel like you're actually learning something. And two, pick a good book, like download the PDF version of a book. And just, books are awesome because they have extremely high quality information for you, and you're not going to waste your time. So balance it out. That's what I would say.
That's amazing, Nick. Thank you so much. I think it's been a wonderful session having you with us, discussing about a lot of things around Flutter and most importantly, programming, which I find very interesting. Uh,
Yeah.
so, so any other last thoughts on viewers around Flutter and not just Flutter, maybe any other programmers per se who are watching this video? What are your thoughts on the next year in programming industry, and what do you think is the important skill that they should probably possess?
Yeah. My advice is um, be focused on programming fundamentals first, right? Balance it out. If you want to learn Flutter, uh, do actual real applications. It could be the dumbest idea. Just crank it out. Say, hey, I created an app. What do you think? Do real apps. Build a portfolio with real apps. I have a brother-in-law. He's lives in Russia. He had no English, no programming. He was a sushi chef. And in 2 years, he now makes more money than his parents, who are doctors in Russia. Programming. He does Angular and React programming.
All right.
How did he get there? Every day, my wife, we live in the US, helped him with English. He learned his butt off with English. He had the motivation, right? Having 2 kids and, having not a good career really motivates you. Let me just say, you have to have the motivation, right?
Definitely.
Having no money motivates you, right? So he learned English every day. He really focused on it, and not just like speaking, like pronouncing, like having a good way to be understood as well, right? Like, working on his accent and all that. Then he started doing React development. I got him into that, web development, and web development is hard. He also did some React Native. React Native, actually, he did a lot of, and I would have shown him Flutter as well, but React Native too is fine. And he just created some simple apps. He put it on GitHub, and eventually he had a portfolio of like 2 or 3 apps, and he got a job with a company who was like, wow, we really need a programmer. You look like a good junior developer. And he was a sharp guy, and he was good at communicating. And now he has a great job, and he makes really good money. And so my advice is like, figure out your end goal and be careful about how you get there. Like, don't just watch videos all day, like write real apps. And then the second big piece of advice I have, sorry, this is a long answer, is with the pandemic and a lot of economies being hurt right now, like people want to save a lot of money. Sometimes it's hard to just get by as just like doing like front end development. For bigger companies, or like jobs that, like bigger companies, it's fine. For startups, if they have a budget, just have someone do front end development. That's fine. But at the end of the day, you're really going to get amazing job skills and really stand out on the market if you can do full stack development. And full stack development is like 60+% of Flutter apps I see out there have a web service API that they need to work with. Like, you need some backend to transfer data to the device. So learn how to do backend development as well, and you're going to have very, very marketable job skills. So like my YouTube channel and some courses I'm creating, I'm teaching full stack Flutter. So Flutter basics, but then also how do you use Dart, the same kind of like programming language. You don't have to learn a new programming language and ship backend web service APIs. So get into full stack Flutter. That's my advice, and really stand out in the market.
That's amazing, Nick. Thank you so much for your ideas and thoughts. I think everybody will be really excited to know more about what is up with the channel. I think everybody will be excited to know, and I would highly recommend you guys to go check fluttercrashcourse.com. It's actually one of the highest ranked in Google search engine. If you put Flutter course, you'll find a Flutter Crash Course in there. You can check that out. It's in the description. I also have linked Nick Manning's YouTube channel in the description as well. Go check it out. Let me meet you in the next video. Thank you again, Nick, for your time. It's been an amazing session. Let me meet you guys also in the next video. Until then, it's Bharat. Peace out. Have a super awesome day.
See you.